The man here we're following is Nehemiah, okay? And Nehemiah found himself as the cupbearer to the king. That's where he found himself 141 years after his people, the Israelites, were exiled from their hometown, Jerusalem. And he was standing before this king and asked his king, because he felt burdened for Jerusalem, to go back and rebuild the city. And above all of the obstacles in his way, he got what he asked for. He actually got freedom to go back and rebuild this wall. And so he headed back, and along the way, he found opposition. And so he was bringing with him people, and he had some of the king's resources. And last week, we talked about the opposition that he would experience. There would be people there jeering him, mocking him, trying to stop the work that God was doing, rather. Now, if you notice, we're in chapter 4. We actually did skip chapter 3. And the reason is, one of the reasons is it's a giant list of names. And those lists of names list all of the people who were at the wall working. And so we know that the Israelites are actually now working on this wall. And so we find ourselves in chapter 4, and we pick it up with what we just heard, that ultimately, even though the wall work has begun, the detractors are back. They're back, and this time they're back for more. They want to take it a step further. They started out mocking and taunting, and now they're jeering, they're angry, and they're preparing for more attack. And so as Nehemiah's opposition gets worse, we see this go from a mild nuisance to a severe threat. And so Nehemiah finds himself kind of back against the wall, trying to figure out what they're going to do, because his people are psychologically threatened, but also physically threatened. So there's both of these things happening. Now, there's two ways I want you to hear this, okay? Because this is a lot, but there's two ways I want you to hear this. So filter the sermon through these two ideas. The first thing is that Bay City Church is a new church in San Francisco, and we're trying to do good work for the city, through the city, as people of the city, and we're trying to help change this place, okay? And as we do that, there will be opposition that simply just doesn't like what we're doing. That's common, that happens. It happens to Christians, it happens to non-Christians. When you do good work, your good work sometimes threatens other people, and we're going to experience opposition. But there's also another way I want you to see this. As you seek to grow spiritually, listen, you're here in a church. Even if you were drug here, you probably have some at least idea or hope that, hey, I want to be a good person. I want to kind of learn a little bit. I'm interested in growing. If you feel that way and you're trying to overcome some sort of personal sin or personal adversity, there is going to be things in you and in others that are going to try to stop that from taking place. Okay? Have you ever gotten in your own way trying to do something good for yourself? Okay? Slept in too long, right? Stayed up too late. Happens all the time, right? We get in our own way, other people will come against us. It happens. And so there's opposition. So I want you to look at this through the lens of a church communally, but also individually. So in both cases, you're going to need to learn how and why we need to defend ourselves in the midst of opposition if we're trying to do God's work. Now, if that creates a little angst in you, that's the goal. Okay, let me explain this to you. If you're a Christian or a non-Christian, both alike, my goal is to kind of take you on a journey today. I want to make you feel something across this. So I actually want to do my first thing I want to do is I actually want to get you excited. I want to get you excited to go out and battle what might be against you so you could become a better person and you could create a better San Francisco. I want you to get excited about that. I want to create a little fire in you to battle what opposes you. But then I want to create a little bit of angst. I want to create a lot of angst. I want to create a serious angst. I want to put a lot of stuff on your shoulders. And I want you to feel it. I want you to bear it. And some of you already are bearing it. I want you to feel like, man, this is heavy. There's a lot going on here. Maybe even get a little anxious. Maybe even kind of second guess yourself a little bit. But then what I want to do is I want to relieve you of that. I want to relieve you of all of the weight you're going to feel. And so I want you to be aware of what you're feeling as you hear how we talk, because this is on purpose, okay? And so experience the roller coaster of feelings. And the reason why I want to take you through this is because I believe this is exactly what the people who were building the wall felt. They felt excited. They felt, wait a second, there's kind of a lot going here. And then they felt afraid, but then they also felt very relieved, okay? So as we look to defend ourselves, keep that in mind, but keep these four things. There's 4 remembrances you're going to have to do, and this is the frame up for the sermon. There are 4 things that we see Nehemiah do that he remembers. He remembers these 4 things, and as he remembers them, it helps him better defend God's work. So check this out. First thing, remember, attack will come. Attack will come. Now, this is a little bit of recap, but look at me. Look at verse 4. chapter 4, verse 1. Look at this. Now when Sanballat heard that we were building the wall, this is Nehemiah talking, he was angry. So this guy's mad and greatly enraged, and he started jeering at the Jews, the people that were building the wall. And he said in the presence of his brothers and the army of Samaria, what are these feeble Jews doing? So now he's taunting them, right? Imagine them up on the wall, they're building, and he's down here. Look at them. What are they trying to do? What are they trying to do? And he's mocking them. And he says, will they restore it for themselves? Asking a mocking rhetorical question. Will they sacrifice? What are they going to do? Will they finish it in a day? Why are they working so hard? Will they revive the stones out of the heaps of rubbish and the burned ones at that? So there's imagine all these stones broken down that the wall had originally fallen. Some of them are burned, and the Israelites are trying to take the stones and put them back on the wall, and they're saying these stones can't be used. They're starting to intensify their attack. And Tobiah the Ammonite was beside him and said, yes, what they are building, if a fox goes up on it, it will break down their stone wall. So now he's really taunting them, right? So like we don't have foxes running around San Francisco, but maybe we got like stray cats, I don't know, raccoons. Imagine a stray cat runs up your garage and knocks it down, right? He's mocking them, okay? Nehemiah was teased last week, and now they're treating him with disrespect, they're mocking him, and now they're threatening him, and we're going to see them finally attack him. But for us, I want you guys to hear this. It almost seems to be a principle that when you're doing some work for God, that there will be an attack. I want you to feel that. That as you do work in the name of the Lord, in the name of God, the God of the Bible, that there will be attack. And it happens all in the Bible, but it also happens to us personally. In the Bible, it actually happens to Jesus, right? And there's a Matthew chapter 4, another book in the Bible. Jesus gets baptized to inaugurate his ministry, to go off and save human history. That was his goal. And then immediately he finds himself in a desert, being spiritually attacked by Satan himself. There's another guy in the Bible named Elijah who saves his people from an attack of another god and immediately finds himself in crippling depression. Maybe you've experienced that. 2 Timothy 3:12 says this, indeed, all who desire to live a godly life in Christ Jesus will be persecuted. Now, for those that are Christians, if you live a life marked after a guy named Jesus who died and was mocked, that may happen to you. It's very possible. Some small examples of me. I remember when we were planting Bay City Church about 2 years ago, when we first got here, we had one of the things you have to do for church is you have to raise money. It's kind of like a business. You have to get enough money together so that way you can like get a school that would like have you in it, right? You have to do some of those basic things. And we were trying to do that. And so we brought in a church that would help maybe be interested in our vision. And so the church flew out, and they're from Kentucky, right? They've got acres in their backyard. They don't know what it's like to have a single-family house touching other single-family houses. That's very new for them. They mocked my front yard. They're like, you don't have grass. It's hilarious. They made fun of us, okay? They mocked us like Sanballat and Tobiah. No, I'm just kidding. They're on our team. They're on our team. So they show up, and one of the things that happens oftentimes in the city is crime, right? And so these guys get right off a plane, and we park down up in Dogpatch for lunch. And these guys, they get out of their nice Ford Flex, and I was like, hey, so I think it would be wise if you guys brought your bags with you, because someone's going to steal your bags. And they're like, we're only going to be in here 30 minutes. No big deal. It'll be fine. I was like, okay. So we go in and we have lunch, and 45 minutes later we come out, and lo and behold, all of the windows are smashed, and all of their bags are gone, except for one. Some guy got lucky, right? See, some guy, he's like, not me, I'm good. But everybody else got their bags stolen. And they experienced this. And one of the things that the main guy said to me is like, wow, there's a presence here that feels evil. Now, to somebody from Kentucky, this is the perfect storm, right? It's almost as if we should have hired someone to smash in their windows and to take their bags so they would give to Bay City. So we have a team for that. If you go to baycitysf.info, I'm just kidding. But they experienced that, and they said, hey, we do see a need here for more churches. And so they gave money to Bay City Church to help us start. And but those are some spiritual type attacks that would take place. That when you're doing something positive, there might be an attack from within yourself, there may be an attack from other people, but there also could be attack spiritually. They could happen. As a church, we're going to say different things than the overall city or the overall Bay Area is going to say. We have different values, right? If you believe the Bible, for those of us that are Christians, we believe different things about money, different things about sex, different things about family, different things about counseling, different things about how to live. And so that sometimes will rub people the wrong way. And sometimes anger is someone's response to God's word because it challenges worldviews and values. If your worldview is challenged, oftentimes you could get angry, and that's possible. Okay? So you see that. But now, how should we respond? Because we're preparing, we're bracing it, and we have to remember something else. So first, we have to remember that attack will come. Then you got to remember this. Remember to pray. Oh, geez, you're going to hit us with this? Like, I already know I don't pray enough, man. Hey, man, I'm not even a Christian. I don't think prayer is valuable. Just hear me out. Hear me out. Prayer, talking and conversing with God, is very underutilized. Okay, I think you probably get that. Certainly in my life, maybe in yours, but as a whole, absolutely. Christians, though, they believe that we have personal access to the sovereign creator of the universe. We believe that. And if we have that guy, we should probably use him, right? Not just in power, but in relationship. Personal access. It's an amazing thing. And so we want to use it. But oftentimes, whenever trial comes up or opposition or stress in our lives, we get all geeked up on strategy instead of prayer. We get geeked up. We love websites. We love 10 steps. We love BuzzFeed. Multiple steps. The more steps I can click through and read about how to change my life, the better. Okay? More infographics. The best infographic, how to change my life. Boom, boom, boom. 48 steps. Okay? I love that. If I'm honest with you, I love nerding out like that. I love that stuff. But there's more than just strategy. There's prayer, and prayer is talking to God. Look at verse 4 with me. Well, I should say one thing about this. When you do pray, don't pray like we're about to read, okay? And I'm going to tell you why after. Check this out. Verse 4. Hear, O God, so this is Nehemiah praying after the opposition hit. Hear, O God, for we are despised. Turn back their taunt on their own heads, and give them up to be plundered in a land where they are captives. Do not cover their guilt, and let not their sin be blotted out from your sight, for they have provoked you to anger in the presence of the builders. Now, Nehemiah is kind of getting fed up, right? He's getting fed up. And many of us want to pray this often. I don't know about you, but sometimes I want to pray this prayer. Maybe not all the way like do not cover their guilt, but hey, turn it on their own heads, Lord Jesus, figure it out. We want to pray this. But his prayer shouldn't be duplicated. There's two different types of Bible, right? There's prescriptive text and descriptive text, okay? Sometimes you read a text and it's just giving you a description. The trouble was when you read a description and you make it prescriptive, like you're supposed to just do whatever it says. Many of you have trouble with the Bible because when you read it and you read stuff like that, you say, well, that's why I don't believe in God, because God's, he's an angry person. Well, actually, that's just a description. We shouldn't take that wholesale. But there's another thing here. This prayer from Nehemiah is a cry for justice. Now, justice is good, right? We want justice. In fact, for those that are Christian, that's a Christian value. It's a Christian value we find in Scripture. It's all through the book of Isaiah. We want injustice to be blotted out in our communities and in our cities. We do not want injustice to take place. This is a cry for justice from Nehemiah because the Israelites are innocent. They're just trying to build their city, and these people are hating on them all over them. And they're sick of it, and he's tired of it. Nehemiah cried this out, and he was looking for blood to be shed. He wanted them to pay for what they did. But for those of us here today in 2019, we actually find ourselves 700 roughly years after this, and since then, a guy named Jesus has shown up. And Jesus has shown up, and what he said is that actually all of the angst and pain and anger you feel for all these people, all of the wrath, the blood you want to be shed, I'll shed the blood. I'll shed the blood. And what we have is we have somebody named Jesus that we can offer up our bitterness, our anger, our guilt, our shame, and our vengeance up to Christ. And Christ would say, I'll pay the wage for what they've done. You want it blotted out? You want them blotted out? I was blotted out. You want blood to be shed? My blood was shed. You want them to die? I'll die. That's what Jesus says. And so for those of us who feel the angst to pray this, do not let bitterness infiltrate in you. You're going to see people harming your city, harming your workplace, harming your families, harming you. You may want them to be blotted out from existence, figuratively even, if not literally. We have access that Nehemiah did not have. And while he was crying for justice, for death, Jesus can say, you have your death in me. We have this access, this power. So for the Christian, they can live, even though broken by opposition, broken by people hating, angry, detracting, we have access to Jesus, and we can still experience gladness in the face of opposition. Now, for many of us, some of us, we're not Christians. You don't have this access, at least not yet. And so maybe angry protesting and bitterness and cutting people out of our lives is our best defense. Or maybe it's willpower. Maybe it's willpower to say, I'm just going to forget about it. I'm not going to think about it. I'm going to try not to bring this up so it can go away in my mind. Well, how long is that going to last? When you have a God like Jesus, you get to lay that bitterness and angst at his feet. And although you are saddened by what people have done to you, you can still walk freely without the burden on your shoulders. Now, God will put missteps of every person, Jesus, on his shoulders, and he will bear the burden and literally pay for them with his life. Okay? That's what Jesus does. You might say, though, hey, man, I've seen Christians not do that. Like, I've seen Christians angrily cut people out, lash out in anger, be upset, hold vengeance, seek revenge. Yes, you probably have. And in that moment, that Christian, and it's been me at times, that knows nothing of the power that they have access to in Jesus Christ. They've either temporarily forgotten it or they don't know. We've mistaked, but luckily we serve a God who's gracious to us, who loves us, who continually calls us back to that loving servanthood. It's beautiful. Now, instead of asking for God to blot out our enemies in prayer, it is probably better for us to seek to bow a knee in humble imitation and adoration for Jesus and pray, Father, forgive these people, for they know not what they do. And that's the beauty of having the vantage point of being here in the future and not in the days of Nehemiah. Okay, so you have to remember that attack's going to come. You have to remember to pray, but you also have to remember to work hard for good in your city and in your life. You have to remember to work hard. This is part of the text. We see these guys building hard. Now, after Nehemiah prays this prayer, right, Sanballat, Tobiah, they're after Nehemiah. Then he prays this prayer, and then what happens? Verse 6. So we built the wall. Now, I know that means something different today, okay? I get that. But we're talking about the wall in Jerusalem, okay? It's a different wall, a much more holy wall. It's a different wall. Yeah, so different. And all the wall was joined together to half its height, for the people had mind to work. People had mind to work. Now, if you're like me, you half expected to read, okay, so we stopped building the wall, and we figured out what was going on with Tobiah and Sanballat. We just needed to figure out what these two knuckleheads want. Or you might have thought, so we stopped building the wall, for we were afraid from the attacks were coming. But neither of those two things happened. Neither of them happened. They just kept building. They just kept building. They just kept working. Good will not come to our cities, to our churches, to ourselves, just through osmosis and by itself. It will not come. Many of us, there's a weird thing that happens today because as millennials get older, many millennials, including myself, we have thought that as I get older, I'm just going to get more mature. I'm going to figure out money better. I'm going to give to my church. I'm going to serve. I'm going to go to that soup kitchen downtown, and I'll get married and have kids, and I'll figure all that stuff out. It'll just come. And many of us are finding out that is not the case. That is not the case. It does not just come. There is work. And you might say, no. I learned numbers. I learned letters. I learned math. I learned science. And I learned all that just because I got older. Well, you were in school, okay? You worked. You learned. You have to do the same thing for our city. Now, there's two camps that are going to hear this and think two different things, okay? The first camp's going to hear, yes, that's right. You need to work hard. And if you don't, things aren't going to go your way, and that's your fault. You need to figure it out. Okay, I tend to find myself in that camp. Okay, Jerusalem's not going to be built. San Francisco, the Bay Area, is not going to change unless you get up and you work and you serve. Okay, you feel that? Whoa, geez. Okay, there's another camp. You just need, you don't work hard's important, I think, but really what you need to do is you need to pray, and you need to trust that God will provide. You don't need to do anything else. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go rest in the power of the Spirit on my couch as I turn on my Nintendo Switch and play Mario Kart to the glory of God and the joy of all people. And maybe someone will bring me Mountain Dew while I'm here. There's two camps. Which of these is true? Which of them? Both. I think we all can sense that both, but yet nonetheless one of us leans to one side or the other, right? One of us leans to both sides or the other. Both is true. Look at verse 7. When Sanballat and Tobiah and the Arabs and the Ammonites and the Ashdodites heard that the repairing of the walls of Jerusalem was going forward and that the breaches were beginning to be closed, they were very angry. And they plotted together to come and fight against Jerusalem to cause confusion in it. Verse 9, very important. And so we prayed to our God and set a guard as protection against them day and night. What did they do, guys? Opposition coming. They knew it was going to happen. They did two things. They prayed and they set a guard. They did both. They prayed, they set a guard. And it's obvious throughout all of the Bible that we see God's sovereignty and man's responsibility, human responsibility, are two things that go together. We see that all throughout Scripture. It's almost as if God is saying, I'll heal you, but also make sure you take your medicine. Make sure you take your medicine. In fact, there's a part in the Bible where that literally happens. A guy named Hezekiah, a king, is going to die, but God promises him 15 more years of life. Guaranteed. Guaranteed 15 years. He's all excited. He's excited. He's like, I got 15 more years. But then what does he do? His servant brings him a cake of figs to help him get healthy. I'll heal you. Take your medicine. It's both. You see, both. They go together. And God loves to work through his creation and often uses human means and work to bring about his end, okay? Now, I get this. This creates a little bit of a massive tension. Massive tension because you're like, well, is it about the work I do or is it about God? Can I go play Nintendo or like what happens, okay? Massive tension. Well, Andy Stanley talks about the fact that there are two things here going on. There are problems to solve and there are tensions to manage. Not everything's a problem to solve. If you want to solve this problem, you can choose one. But oftentimes, there's tensions. And this is a tension, that two of these things are being said and taught in the Scriptures, and we have to figure out how to rest in the tension of both of these things taking place, okay? In one sense, you have responsibility to do your work, and in another sense, if God calls you his, you can't screw it up bad enough to ruin his plans. Both things happen. So for now, for those of us who are understanding this, we're now free to work for God, free to work for him, and we're so free in doing that we know God's completely in charge and will ultimately not let these plans be ruined. It's a beautiful idea, okay? Next thing you need to remember, okay? So remember, you've got to remember to pray. You've got to remember that attack's going to come. You've got to remember to work hard. You got to remember that you need others. Remember you need others. Remember. In the prevalent American idea is to do it alone. Superhero, Lone Ranger. This person, he does it all by themselves. This guy's not real, okay? He's not real. We need other people to help us fight the battles that we're trying to fight, okay? We need other people to help us fight. Now, some of you are feeling like, man, I don't got anybody. I know. I hear you. But nonetheless, we need other people to help us fight. Not just siloed isolation that comes out every now and then for a therapist or a counselor. Yet many of us find ourselves there. We don't have friends. We don't have relationships. We don't connect with anybody. I got to come out for a counselor. Just look at the state of those building the wall when the attacks begin. Watch, they feel the exact same thing. Verse 10. In Judah it was said, the strength of those who bear the wall and the burdens is failing. They're seeing that this isn't working. There is too much rubble. Remember that thing Sanballat said? There's too much. By ourselves, we will not be able to rebuild the wall. And our enemies said, they will not know or see it till we come among them and kill them and stop the work. Man, they're stressed out. At that time, the Jews who lived near them came from all directions and said to us 10 times, you must return to us. So the people that are scattered around are like, yo, you got to come back. You got to come help us. They feel the anxiousness of not having everyone together working in cooperation. They feel that pain. Those building the wall are beginning to believe the negative voices. They're beginning to believe the negative voices of the detractors. They've heard the stories through the grapevine that they might be attacked. they're starting to say, we can't do this. When you fight alone, you're vulnerable to negative self-talk. The world speaks things into you. You begin to believe them as truths, and you begin to speak them into your own lives. That's happened to us. But also when you fight alone, you're vulnerable to discouragement as well. You become discouraged by little things that happen, and you start getting in this downward spiral of discouragement, talking yourself. And what you do is you go, you know what, I shouldn't go out with my friends. I'm going to take a couple days off work. I'm going to go find myself, and I'm going to go isolate myself because I got to figure this out. And that leads to more negative self-talk and more discouragement. Happens. But when you fight with others, you get a different result. Look at verse 14. And I looked and arose and said to the nobles and to the officials and to the rest of the people, do not be afraid of them. This is Nehemiah saying, remember the Lord who is great and awesome, and fight for your brothers, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your home. When you fight together with other people, they remind you of why you're laboring in the first place. Oftentimes we forget why we labor for God, why we labor for our families, why we labor for ourselves and for our jobs. But when you get together with other people, when you find yourself in a marriage, when you find yourself in a family, when you find yourself at a church, when you find yourself at a co-op or at work, you begin to see that other people can help speak positive into your life, and that negativity falls off. Okay, you feel that. Some of us right now are discouraged by the financial burden in this city. We all probably are. You feel the stress. You feel like you're not making a difference. Some of us are discouraged by our friendships and the people leaving our lives or moving out of the city. But we need to be continually reminded that Jesus is our Lord. Remember what Nehemiah says? He says, remember your God who is good and awesome. You need to be reminded of your God who is good and awesome, who will never leave you nor forsake you. Now, if you're not a Christian, hey, you can't go at it alone. Life lived alone doesn't work. You're trying. It doesn't work. And believing what you believe, that's fine. But coming together for people and getting to understand and figure out what's actually the root cause of your heart, you're going to need others for that. Okay? You're going to need others. Okay. There's a lot. There's a lot here. You got all those remembers? Do you remember all of the remembers? Say them right now. Remember. You don't remember. You don't remember. I just remember like what I leave, the feeling with I leave with church sometimes, you know what I mean? I don't remember all of the stuff. I just remember like how I felt. And I would hate for you guys here to leave with anxiety all over your soul, because I can feel that. I got it right now. I'm freaking out. I'm reading this thing like, yo, I don't do any of this. I'm trying. Holy cow. I feel this. Fight, battle, defend the city. City's at stake. Do it alone. Plant a church. Get a job. Get an income. Pay your debt. You experience that. You're in charge of your life. If you fail, you're going to fail. If you fail, you're going to go down. Everyone's going to see it. Everyone's going to know. No wake up early. No days off. I follow The Rock on Instagram. He never sleeps. I got to stop. What do I do? Man, I feel that weight, man. I just build that tension up. Aren't you exhausted from carrying all that? Because you have to get up tomorrow and go to work and carry it again. And it's another thing. There's a lot here. This creates an angst in us. And many of us are carrying these massive burdens for our city, for our personal transformation, even for a church like ours. You're carrying a burden on your shoulders, but hey, you were never meant to carry that burden. And the default mode of the human heart is to just pick it up and go, this is mine. I got to deal with this. The problem with individual isolation, although it has its benefits in America, is that oftentimes we silo ourselves emotionally as well. And so we carry all of it ourselves. While we do, though, fight for the personal and communal change in our cities, you do have to remember that Jesus is the one who fights the battle. Jesus is actually the one who fights the battle. Many of us have come tired from being on this hamster wheel of life, and we labor to receive food pellets from the universe that in the form of attaboys and likes and comments on social media, and when we don't get them, we go hungry. That's not the way you were ever meant to feel. The fact of the matter, guys, is that Jesus builds his church. He hears his sheep. That's some of you. He hears his sheep. And while we work, he is bringing about change through our efforts. And you can feel that. And he doesn't do this, by the way, as some evil, like, Megazord lion thing who's like dictating down to you all these rules. If you fail, you're going to hell. You better knock it off. Instead, he presents it like a loving father. Like a loving father. Many of us have wandered away from church because we've heard church presented to us in a way that is this evil, dictatorial, like librarian with a ruler type God who whacks us on the hand if we're too loud. That is not the God of the Bible. I'll give you an example of the way God likes to work with us. So my daughter, Naomi, my youngest, is just got this scooter. And it's in the house, okay? It's another battle, but it's in the house. And it's bumping into everything. But she really likes the scooter. She loves the scooter, in fact. It's like one of her favorite toys, and she actually is on it constantly. But she's only 2, so it's a little harder for her to use it, and sometimes she'll pick it up, and she'll get on it, and she slips off, and she like moves it around, and if like she gets to the end of the hallway and needs to flip it around, well, she screams my name to come help her flip the scooter around, okay? She can't move it very well, but I love walking up to her when she's playing with it because the delight in her face is like unmatchable. It's just unbelievable. So she's on this thing, and so she'll put her foot on it, and so what I like to do is I'll grab her hands, and I'll just like roll her down the hall, right? I'll just roll her down the hall. And she's like, and guess what? She's trying to balance on it. And she's kicking her foot a little bit. You know, is it contributing to the inertia of what I don't think so. But she's trying. And she's going, and she's pushing it. And what's my daughter's reaction to me doing that for her? It's joy. She's so happy. Her smile is so big. Her eyes are wide. She's looking at the hall. She's maneuvering out of the way of other toys as she goes down the hall. She's enjoying herself so much. But what's my reaction as a father? What's my reaction? Well, I can tell you what it's not. It's not like bitter anger that she doesn't know how to balance yet. And I'll say, hey, what's wrong with you? Why can't you kick your leg well enough? Hey, why don't you grip this a little harder? If you did, you might be able to stay on it. And some of us see God that way. Some of us see God grabbing our hand going, hey, no, it's this way, idiot. And you feel God like that. But what's my response to Naomi on that scooter? It's joy. I love seeing her grow. I love seeing her balance on this scooter and kick back and forth and try to mimic her older brothers and sisters that she's trying to follow. It's adorably beautiful to me. I absolutely love it. I am pleased with her efforts. So pleased with her efforts. And I marvel at the fact she's growing right before my eyes. Friends, this is God to us. And you might say, no, that's a kid example. I'm an adult. And yeah, Jesus says, unless you come to me with the love of a child, you will not enter the kingdom of God. It's the exact same thing. And so unless we're like Naomi on the scooter, friends, we'll never understand the love of God. We'll never get it. You must work for your city and for yourselves with the joy of a child, not the fear of an adult. And until you grasp that, you're always going to feel the weight on your shoulders. You're just going to feel the burden. Now I want to relieve it just a little bit more, okay? You're in this series and you hear about this guy Nehemiah. And you're like, this guy Nehemiah's got it all together. Except for that one prayer, he's pretty good. Like, I got to follow this dude. Guys, Nehemiah is a foreshadow to another Nehemiah, the ultimate Nehemiah. You see, there was another guy coming that is going to rebuild his city. And that's going to gather his people together, that his people might come to worship and celebrate the work that was being done. And this ultimate Nehemiah didn't just do so at the risk of his life, he did it at the expense of his life. And that this guy, Jesus, the ultimate Nehemiah, comes for us and he says, not only is there attack, but I got the attack. All are safe in these walls. For those that come to Jesus, you sit safely in his midst. No matter the anxiousness you feel and the opposition, you sit safely. Friends, you're now free to work with joy and weightlessness. Your work, although necessary, brings joy to God, and it's not at all contingent on the will he's going to bring forth. It's both of those things. Many of us work for results, but you're going to have to learn to work for pleasure to our God, that he enjoys it. He enjoys it and loves it. I love it. I love seeing my son run around here because I get to see him. And a couple weeks ago, he was pretty sick, so he sat in here with us. And he saw like me holding this Bible. And afterwards, we're sitting out there, and everyone had kind of left. And he saw him looking at my Bible like really hard, like his eyes were like really wide. And I was like holding, and he's like, "What, are you looking at my Bible?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I was like, "What, do you want a Bible like this?" He's like, "I can have a Bible like that?" I'm like, "Yeah, well, you're going to have to learn to read. It's kind of hard. But after that, yeah, you can have a Bible like this." And he's like, "That's awesome. I want a Bible like you, Dad." And I was like, "Yeah." And it's like, and then maybe one day you stand up there and you talk to people. It's like, "I can talk to everybody?" And I was like, "Yeah, if you want." He's like, "I want to talk to everybody." And so I was like, "Okay, son, why don't we do this? Why don't I give you this Bible? Why don't I give you this Bible? But I can't give it to you yet because you can't read and you're still working on your colors. So I'm going to write your name in it, and I'm going to give it to you when you're ready." So I wrote his name in this Bible, right? And I let him bring it home that day, and he drug it all over the floor. But he tried. It was heavy for him. And he drug it all over the floor. But he walked around, and he said, "You know what? It's so fun being around my dad at work." And when you serve your city, you're with your dad at work. That's the relationship you feel with Jesus. So you're with your dad. You're not with an overlord. You're with your dad.